Trump just said he's ready to use the military against American citizens, and he's dead serious. Look, I need you to pay attention to what's happening right now, because Trump isn't hiding it anymore. He's openly talking about invoking something called the Insurrection Act. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry. I'm going to break it down for you. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't normal. This isn't some technical legal procedure. This is about whether a president can send troops into American streets to enforce his will. And Trump, he's telling us exactly what he wants to do. So let's talk about what the Insurrection Act actually is, where it came from, why Trump keeps bringing it up, and what happens if he actually uses it. Here's what Trump said recently, and I'm paraphrasing here. He claims that almost half of all presidents have used the Insurrection Act. He says George H.W. Bush used it 28 times, and then he throws in this little gem. If I needed it, I'd use it. I don't think there's any reason right now, but if I needed it, I'd use it. Let me translate that for you. I'm not using it yet, but I want you to get comfortable with the idea. But this is classic Trump. He's normalizing something extreme by repeating it over and over until it doesn't sound extreme anymore. But here's the problem. Almost everything he just said, completely false. Let's get the facts straight. First, it's not half of all presidents who've used the Insurrection Act. It's 15 presidents. That's about 33%, not half. Second, George H.W. Bush didn't use it 28 times. He used it twice, once during the LA riots after the Rodney King verdict, when California asked for help, and once in the U.S. Virgin Islands after Hurricane Hugo. That's it, 2 times, not 28. So why is Trump lying about this? Simple. He wants you to think this is normal. Routine. Just another tool in the presidential toolbox. But it's not. The Insurrection Act is an emergency power. It's meant for extreme situations, riots, insurrections, civil rights violations so severe that state governments can't handle them. It's not meant for a president who just wants to flex. So what exactly is this law, and where did it come from? The Insurrection Act isn't just one law. It's a collection of federal statutes that date all the way back to the late 1700s. We're talking about the early days of the American Republic. The original version was passed in 1792, just a few years after the Constitution was ratified. Back then, the federal government was weak. States had their own militias. And the founders worried about what would happen if a rebellion broke out and the government couldn't stop it. So they gave the president the power to call up militias and eventually federal troops to put down insurrections. Over the years, the law evolved. It was updated during the Civil War. It was used during Reconstruction to protect freed slaves from violent white supremacists. It was invoked during the Civil Rights Movement to enforce desegregation. Today, the Insurrection Act lives in Title 10 of the U.S. Code. And the key thing to understand is this. It allows the president to deploy active duty military forces inside the United States. That's huge, because normally there's a law called the Posse Comitatus Act that says the military can't be used for domestic law enforcement. But the Insurrection Act is one of the few exceptions. So when a president invokes it, they're bypassing that restriction. They're saying the situation is so bad, we need soldiers on American streets. And that's why this power is so dangerous in the wrong hands. So when can a president legally invoke the Insurrection Act? There are 3 main scenarios, and they're all written into federal law. Scenario 1, a state requests it if a governor asks the president for military help because local forces can't control a situation. The president can send troops. That's what happened during the LA riots in 1992. Scenario 2, a state is violating people's civil rights or refusing to follow federal court orders. The most famous example, when President Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne to Little Rock, Arkansas in 1957 to enforce school desegregation, the state was defying the Supreme Court. So federal troops escorted black students into the school while angry mobs protested. That was the Insurrection Act being used to protect civil rights. Scenario 3, there's an invasion or domestic violence is so severe that state authorities can't enforce the law, and it's stopping the federal government from doing its job. Now, here's the key. Trump would almost certainly try to use that third scenario. He'd claim that states are blocking federal law enforcement, that there's chaos in the streets, that he has no choice. But here's the thing. The chaos he's talking about, it doesn't actually exist. Or worse, it's chaos his own policies created. Legal experts are already calling this out. One Trump-appointed judge said his claims about street violence were untethered to the facts. Another judge said Trump was adding fuel to a fire he started. In other words, he'd create the crisis, then use it as an excuse to send in the troops. Let me explain why this is so dangerous. The Insurrection Act is supposed to protect people's rights. Historically, It's been used to stop riots, yes, but it's also been used to enforce civil rights when states wouldn't, to protect people from violence, to uphold the rule of law. Trump wants to flip that on its head. He wants to use the military to crack down on protests, to enforce immigration raids with extreme force, to intimidate cities and states that oppose him. Think about that. The same law that was used to protect black students in the 1950s could now be used to deploy troops against peaceful protesters or immigrants. And here's the scariest part. Once troops are deployed, who stops them? The courts can try, but the Supreme Court has already said that directing the military is a core constitutional function of the president, meaning even if he breaks the law while doing it, he might be immune from prosecution. That's the Trump immunity ruling coming back to haunt us. Now, there is some hope. Legal experts believe courts could still block an unlawful invocation of the Insurrection Act. There's legal precedent, sort of. Judges have suggested in the past that courts should be able to review whether the president's justification is actually true. But here's the problem. There's no definitive Supreme Court ruling on this. It's an open question. And with this Supreme Court, I wouldn't bet on them stopping Trump. And listen, this isn't just hypothetical. We're already seeing the groundwork being laid. ICE agents are conducting raids with extreme force. People are being detained without warrants. Constitutional rights are being violated in real time, and it's all being caught on camera. And that's actually important because those videos, they're evidence. Evidence that shows Trump is creating chaos on purpose. One federal judge in Chicago actually used cell phone footage submitted by citizens as evidence in her ruling. She said the videos proved that Trump's agents were violating people's Fourth Amendment rights, protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. So here's what people are doing. They're recording everything. They're documenting the abuses. They're blowing whistles, literally, to draw attention to what's happening. Because if Trump does invoke the Insurrection Act, we're going to need proof that the emergency he's responding to is one he manufactured himself. So what can we do? First, keep recording. Keep documenting. Every video, every piece of evidence matters. It's going to be critical in court. Second, states need to go on offense. We're already seeing some state attorneys general file lawsuits to stop unconstitutional raids, but we need more of that. States need to challenge federal overreach aggressively and preemptively. Third, we need to stay informed. Trump is counting on people tuning out. He's counting on exhaustion. Don't let him win that way. And fourth, and I can't stress this enough, we need to prepare for the possibility that he actually does this. Because every time Trump says something outrageous, we think he won't really do that. And then he does. He's telling us his plan. We need to believe him. The Insurrection Act was created to protect the country. It's been used throughout history, sometimes for good, sometimes controversially, but it was never meant to be a weapon for one man's political agenda. Look, I know this is heavy. I know it's scary, but ignoring it won't make it go away. Trump is openly fantasizing about deploying the military against American citizens. He's laying the groundwork. He's testing the waters. And the only thing standing between him and that power, the courts, the states, and all of us paying attention. So don't look away. Stay informed. Stay engaged. And if you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, this story is far from over. I'll see you in the next one.